Kind of taking a step back then, and looking at sort of the start of the project when they first receive sort of tender docs.
Yeah.
What are sort of the biggest red flags you would look for in a tender that will tell you that hey, there's potentially going to be a lot of variations coming later on this?
When I'm looking reviewing a tender or pricing a tender.
Pricing a tender.
So lack of information, assumptions, asking to put PC sums in or provisional sums in. If it's So obviously bearing in mind I'm not the specialty in the trade. So if I'm working with a client, I don't know. I know I've got an idea of all the trades, obviously, but I'm not educated enough, and I would never overrule a contractor's decision. So, for example, I will look at them and they'll have a look at the design. Is there enough information for them to price it? And it all depends on how they work, obviously. But I go their guidance. Now, if there isn't, if they all say to me, they haven't allowed for this, they haven't allowed for that, it's going to need this, it's going to need that. What I always give as guidance is price the document, because I don't know who's looking at this information, and ultimately you're in competition. So when I review a tender on behalf of a client, I make sure that I'm doing like for like comparison, because there are set rules. There is governance on how you are supposed to do a proper like for like comparison. But I know lots of people in the industry don't do it properly. So for example, if you've got 3 tenders and one person has priced something and the others haven't, to make a fair comparison, you need to take that cost, say I don't know, a shutter, for example, and it costs £5,000, you need to put that 5,000 in the other two costs to make them comparable. Also, if you have when you're looking at tenders, if you're looking at provisional sums, because there isn't enough information, that's what provisional sum is for, and one of the tenders has put £500 in and the other two tenders have put £15,000 in, you know that £500 is not realistic, so you need to increase that tender up to the level of, say one was 15,000 and one was 16,000, you put the average of 15 and a half, so that you're looking at comparable. Now I know that's how it's supposed to be done, but unless a PQS practice are doing the tender review, it's unlikely. So what I recommend clients do is what I call below the line. So I always advise my clients to price what's there and what has been allowed for, what's on the specification, on the scope of work, so the pricing document. And then if either way below the line, I will put items missed. So when you're looking at the tender comparison, everyone else, if they're going to be pricing just the same things, and they might not be as honest, or I don't want to say honest, they might not have the same idea of around pricing as you do. So if there's anything that you want to say, actually, you've missed this and you need this, just keep things simple and price what's in the document. And then either on a separate page or what I call below so have that figure, the sum, and that's what's going to be compared to everybody else. And then below the line, I always recommend, if you think that they've put something in that's too expensive or isn't right, there's a better way of doing it. For example, they've picked metal stud work and you think it'd be better in timber, or vice versa, put either value engineering options where you can save money below it. And then if there's items missed but deemed required, so for example, they have forgotten to put ceilings in, or they've missed out a key skirting boards, or whatever it may be, something's been missed out from the tender, or there's a process that's been missed out, or there's contamination and nobody's allowed for contamination, whatever it may be, put those below the line to say, look, these are the things that you've missed out, because then you're not outpricing yourself from everybody else, but you're showing that you've paid attention to you're showing the QS or whoever's looking at it, you've paid attention to the project, you've read the information, you know what you're pricing, and therefore you've paid attention and your price is more likely to be realistic. You're also showing things that have been missed, so that you're guiding the client properly, which shows honesty and integrity and authenticity. You're also then showing, actually, we could save some money here, left, right, and centre. But also, if you put a provisional sum in, I always say, explain why it's a provisional sum and what information is missing, because provisional sums should only be used when there isn't enough money. There isn't enough money to start again. Provisional sums are only supposed to be used when there isn't enough information to price it accurately. So, for example, sometimes a tender will say, allow 150,000 for garden works because there's no garden design. So you just put that provisional sum in. That's easy. But if they turn around and say, right, we want you to put landscaping allow for landscaping and there's no design, you're like, I can't price that. So just put in there awaiting design or whatever it may be. Or, for example, they have specified a certain type of door, but you don't actually know what door it is. You put a provisional sum in for whatever the reason may be, or they haven't given you enough information. So that's how provisional sums should be worked. And then that, I always say, is be as honest and authentic as you can, because hiding things don't work. And if you've got that and having caveats and other bits and pieces, and also if you get that contract sum into your contract, it's setting you up for success moving forward, because you've made them aware of things that they might not be aware. You've shown your integrity, you've shown what you're about, and then you've also got a backup if it's in the contract to say, well, actually, we told you about this, or we told you about that, and we offered you this, and we offered you that. So you've got a paper trail, as it were, to protect your position if things were to go skew if later down the line.